Do you define leadership in your organization as businesses move into a digital space, more so now with COVID? You're going into Zoom, you're going into the digital arena much more. How have you had to redefine leadership within the organization? Let me start with you, Paul.
Well, I mean, I think that the circumstances changed and maybe the way we communicate has moved on significantly, but I think the core role of leadership, achieving more with the support and direction towards others, I think is still very, very valid. And I don't think that that really changes. The levels under which we operate, though, does, and I think that that's where the key changes occurred. So it's really one of communication and how we communicate, how we trust, and how we move forward from that particular point onwards in these very dynamic times that we're in. So I think what COVID enabled us all to do was to sort of step back a bit in a way and re-look at what we'd been doing and give ourselves an opportunity almost to reinvent ourselves. And I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, really. A positive that came out of the whole thing is it gave us a chance to sort of step off the hamster wheel and look around and breathe and think, how can I do things a bit differently, and how can I bring a team remotely with me rather than, you know, as I may have done in the past. So for me, I think the key is communication. I think that's where it's changed the most.
For us, you know, we might have less contact, physical contact, but in terms of connectivity, it is even more necessary. Everybody right now, it's an uncomfortable situation. So we as leader, I think reassuring ourselves as well as the team that we are always there for each other, and to be able to connect even more is crucial for us. And at the end of the day, the core values that all of us have as human beings, nothing has changed, right? We see in our guests as well, although we said that, okay, a lot of technicality have changed, that we have temperature checks and small things, but everybody is still craving for the same connection that all of us are looking forward for.
We, you know, just turned the page on the previous decade and we look forward to the next 10 years. I think we started at the beginning of this year thinking about a 10-year plan. Right, what do we want to achieve between now and 2030 in terms of all of our various business segments? But I think what's actually happened is that our 10-year plan that we formulated just 11 months ago, and the one that we see in the immediate horizon now, November looking into 2021 and even beyond that is very, very different. And so, I think that, leadership in kind of the current context, and particularly in this kind of age of COVID, is really about being nimble. It's about, being nimble and quick to pivot your strategies and your business models. I agree with what Paul said, is that because things are changing so rapidly and so quickly, communication is also extremely critical, because as you change your strategies, as you change your direction, as you make adjustments to your business plans, it's important that we align all of our various stakeholders, right? So including our employees, including our team members, right? But also including our shareholders, our various stakeholders in the company. And so I think, communication is something which is really, really critical in these times, to ensure that with the rapid pace of change, that everyone in the organization and all of the various stakeholders are kept apace with those changes.
I look at leadership much more from a client's perspective, so our clients' perspectives and the candidates that we present to companies. And I agree with what Paul said, and the core principles of leadership, they haven't changed, and they will not change. And communication, of course, became much more obvious in terms of being more agile, and people today, they want direct communication with their leaders, and that communication needs to be more often than the traditional once per year or twice per year communication from the leadership. And however, moving forward, I see a few traits that are important for leaders, and one of them is humility, and we're dealing with different generations today in the workspace. So we need to know that we don't know everything. So we need to be able to embrace humility. We need to be authentic, and But most important, especially in times that things are changing so fast, experience and skills, they still important. But one very important thing that leaders need to develop, it's a new mindset to deal with the pace of changes. And it's embracing change, is embracing and how to adapt themselves and learning dexterity. So that's how I see leadership today. And that's the kind of conversations I have with my clients.
Paul, coming from a very old heritage brand, which is still regarded as a top brand in the world, I'm sure you, as a brand, you set very high standards for potential leaders. How do you ensure that there's also a coming together of the brand values with what's changing in society?
Yeah, I mean, we regularly review the brand, and the brand has almost been through a, should I describe it as a quite a large, not evolution, but almost revolution in the last 5 years. So I think that along with that, that's very much driven by the people within a business, because a business, even if it makes product, is not a business until the people bring it alive. So I think that, it is about this working across many, many different, types, the young all the way, young apprentices right at the beginning who come into the factory and learn a skill, all the way through to the mature sort of like, senior managers and senior leaders. I think what is important really is this whole agility piece and the ability to be able to take something on board and realize it's not as we've looked at it before, and we need to think about new ways. And I think that Brian, I think you were referring to a sort of strategic plan that you worked to. I think at the moment we're lucky if we plan in a month about what's going to happen, because anything longer than that at the moment is such an uncertain world. And I think managing in volatility is probably the key. And remember, we work in a product line whereby whatever we make today will not arrive in Asia, for example, for another sort of 3 or 4 months. And there's a long material supply chain. There's a whole product development, area going on that's a 7-year backward, forwards, backwards window. So there are many, many developments that we need to keep our eyes on, and we just need to have a leadership group that has got the flexibility to deal with the now and to try and predict the future in a volatile way, which maybe is even more volatile than we've ever seen before. And it's moving at a pace it's almost impossible to keep up with, to be honest with you. I think you've just got to decide which is your direction and stick to it to a certain extent, but with a degree of flexibility built in. But if you keep moving around like a weather vane, I think you're going to get very, very confused and lost about which direction you're going to go in, as are your teams. And therefore, a leader at the moment needs to have a stoic view on a long-term ambition and try and steer those choppy waters towards that long-term view. It doesn't matter what storm comes at you, you can deal with it from the helm.
In the past 6 to 8 months, we are constantly reinventing ourselves. Like Paul had said as well, this is our time to reflect. The little bit of a circuit breaker time that we had off was a time for us to reflect back on all of our operational standards, everything that we did. And everything in luxury in the past, we would have never done it. For example, a fine dining restaurant will never imagine doing a delivery for a takeaway. We would not have even delivered to a room, and we would have snobbed off saying that, no, this is not what we do. And at the end, we survived with the takeaways and delivery, and on having from the top level chef to the restaurant staff reinvent themselves on every step of service. Still understanding the core values once again, that we are here to deliver the best service for the guest and not compromising that, but reinventing in terms of the processes and how we conduct and how we communicate with the market turn out to be a success for us. Right now, we have a very strong presence with all of our restaurants in the takeaway and delivery platform. I mean, last year, I would have never allowed it. I would have never thought about it, right? So every step of the way, we are looking back and say, okay, what else could have we done? And a lot of great ideas that are in fact coming from these new upcoming leaders. And I think that's the best part about it.
So it's a kind of humility for you as well, right? And as you said, in the past, you would not do the home delivery, the delivery at all. And now you do. So has humility resulted in more business for you? And is it something you will continue after things settle down? COVID's gone, you got a vaccine. Would you continue with the delivery, or would you revert to your old ways and say, no, yeah, we're back.
No, I think this is, we see it as a new market altogether, right? The outcome or the result has been so strong, so it is already in our budget for next year that, okay, this is something we're going to move forward with. Yes.
Paul, with a brand with such a heritage like Rolls-Royce, the quick changes that Luna was talking about, is that something that you take on board as well, or is yours a bit more of a measured, thought through, process-driven decision making?
Yeah, ordinarily it would be. I mean, like we've just recently launched a new Ghost model line, and that for us is very much of a physical participation element, and the whole world got turned upside down. Firstly, the factory had to close for a period of time, which is just around the crucial sort of delivery element of it. Then we had a variety of things happen around the world. One, a logistics chain that was not operable or was running at 50% or less of its capacity. And then we had venues, for example, in a country like Korea that were owned by the government, where the government basically said, no, that venue's shut 5 days before we're due to do something. So, you got these whole variables you have to deal with all the time. What we were able to do very quickly, because we had the technology, was to be able to run effectively digital launches very, very sharply within our own office environments. And we have a very, good infrastructure for client, shall we describe it as, commissioning experiences whereby they get a chance to speak direct to a designer and have an better understanding of product and what the product can be for them. And we had many of those scenarios going on. So although they weren't physically there, couldn't see, smell, touch, etc., which is a very important element of the emotional drive in a luxury brand, the actual human element of it was still there. It was just done through screen to screen. Not quite the same and not ideal, but it worked. So I think that we adapted and we were able to do things, even in a very, very quintessential brand like ours. It's a long lead time brand. We were still able to move things forward quite quickly.
Brian, as a new leader, what does your generation want in a leader?
My generation, we look at leaders who don't just talk, but also so-called walk the talk, right? I think that's very, very important, is that in leaders is that, we set the direction, but we also set the example, right? And the way that we conduct ourselves, the way that we treat stakeholders, the way that we treat employees, I think speaks volumes about our character, right? I think it's, you want to work in a place where you feel it's an inclusive environment, where you feel like you work with a team that's fully aligned to a direction and to a vision. And so having, leadership that, so-called walks the talk, I think, and kind of exemplifies that authenticity, I think is quite important.
So when we look at the younger generation working from home or working remotely, whatever we want to call, or if they want to travel the world, it's not COVID that it's going to stop them from doing it. And what COVID has done is that it compressed within a few months what traditional corporations would have taken 5 to 10 years. And so the trend to work remotely has started with Generation Z and Generation Y. We just compressed that. So there is this big trend of working remotely. And I think, going back to what we said, it's about being authentic. It's about being agile. It's about having a different mindset, but it's about improving the ways that we communicate. And when I'm talking communication, I'm not talking about being on Zoom 24/7. That's also not the proper way to communicate, because we have our tasks to do as well. And we need our me time, our own time. So there is going to be a balance somewhere, and that corporations are struggling. Some are having a headway on it, but that's going to happen. And I think it's a process that will not be reversed in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your experiences and your thoughts. Paul, Luna, Brian, Wladmir. I think you all make wonderful role models as leaders, and any employee you have should be thankful that they've got somebody like you leading the way. A lot of valuable insights, and I think this will be useful for anybody taking up a role as a leader or considering a role as a leader to bear in mind as we get out of COVID. And I hope at some point we too can get a chance to catch up and meet up and have a face-to-face connection rather than a virtual session like this. But thanks again for your time and for sharing your lunch with us. A lot of food for thought. Thank you very much.